Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Wilany Alya on this video, I will tell you about Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson in full name is Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. She born December 10th, 1830, Amherst, Massachusetts, United States, and she died May 5th, 1886, Amherst. American lyric poet who lived in seclusion and commanded a singular brilliance of style and integrity of vision, Emily Dickinson is one of America's greatest and most original poets of all time. She took definition as her province and challenged the existing definition of poetry and the poet's works. She was the second daughter of Edward and Emily Northcross Dickinson. Emily had one brother, and his name is Austin. He is Emily older brother, and she has one younger sister, and the name is Lavinia, who are nurtured in a quiet and reserved family headed by their authoritative father. She was the poet growing in a well-known and educated family. Calvinism, Transcendentalism, and Puritanism influenced the environment where she lived. Even her family was adhering strictly to one of them, called Calvinism. As long as she lived her life, the environment around her absolutely influenced her. She spent almost the whole life of hers by writing a lot of poems. She had written many poems for the entire of her life. Most of her poems is about love, nature, and death, but only seven of Emily Dickinson lived from 1,800 poems are known to have been published in her lifetime. Usually, she composed poetry and sent it just to his close friends or her family and kept the rest for herself. She prefers to write poetry that is free of grammar and ignores the rules of versification, as evidenced by his original and very bold works. She habitually worked in verse forms suggestive of hymns and ballads with lines of 3 or 4 stories. The Dickinson family was prominent in Amherst. Emily had a good education and attended the Amherst Academy, and then this based from Morris, 1953, and page 231. After that, she left for the South Hadley Female Seminary. She is a shy, quiet child, even looks like a sad mood to strangers. But to his close friends or his family, she is a fun person. Although she was successful at college, she returned after only 1 year at the seminary in 1858 to Amherst, where she began her life of seclusion. During her life, Emily never married, but she had a relationship with a pastor who had influenced Emily's life quite a bit. Always fastidious, Dickinson began to restrict her social activity in her early 20s, staying home from communal function and cultivating intense epistolary relationship with a reduced number of correspondents. In 1855, leaving the large and much-loved house in which she had lived for 5 years, the 25-year-old woman and her family moved back to the dwelling associated with her first decade. The Dickinson Mansion on Main Street in Amherst, 1857 and 1858 were years that deeply troubled Dickinson. Dickinson sent more poems to her sister-in-law Susan Gilbert Dickinson, a cultivated reader, than to any other non-correspondent. Repeatedly professing internal allegiance, these poems often imply that there was a curtain distance between the two that the sister-in-law was felt to be naughty, remote, or even incomprehensible. But for Susan Gilbert, the poem by Emily Dickinson was make her interesting because she thinks Dickinson is very smart too, and full of the meaning on his poems. American Civil War turned her into a poetic poet because during the French she had written hundreds of poems, yet as the war proceeded, she also wrote with growing frequency about self-realization, impetuousness, personal triumphs, and hard-won liberty. The perfect transcendence she had formerly associated with heaven was now attached to a vision of supreme artistry. Dickinson last trip from Amherst were in 1865, 1864 and 1865, when she shared her cousin Louisa and Frances Northcross's boarding house in Cambridge and underwent a course of treatment with the leading Boston ophthalmologist. She described her symptoms as an itching in her eyes and a painful sensitivity to light. Emily often sends letters or portraits to relatives or close friends, but she is the type to be very expressive when a letter or portrait is not replied to. She always sent the letter continuously until finally the letter was replied to. She seemed to demand the recipient to always reply to his letter. She always interpreted that she was ignored or betrayed when his letters were not replied to or were slow to reply to by the recipient. This is because the trauma she was left behind by those closest to her. Whether it was because of death or other things, much of her writing, both poetic and epistolary, seems premised on a feeling of abandonment and a matching effort to deny, overcome, or reflection on sense of solitude. So, Emily wants her friends or her family that she send the letter to pass response. Because of his solitude, he is more focused on his life. His poetry is very original and innovative, usually devising the Bible, classical mythology, and Shakespeare as a role model or reference for her. Dickinson often wrote poetry on any paper. Many of his poems were not even finished and looked like a grocery list. So, Dickinson is, I think she is wrote the poetry in any papers, random papers, not in like make the poetry in the special books. So when his poems were found, the editors grouped these poems themselves into several types such as friends, nature, love, and death. But luckily, Thomas Johnson had published Dickinson poetry in its original form in 1955. Because she always write the poems in random papers, so the editor published her poem in the editor language, not by Dickinson language. But in 1955, Thomas Johnson published Dickinson poetry in original, so we can see the original poem by Dickinson in 1955 by Thomas Johnson. There is example of the poem by Dickinson. The title of the poem is Because I Could Not Stop for That. Contains 6 stanzas. In every stanza, there are 4 lines, but in this example, I just put 1 stanza. So I will write the poems. Because I could not stop for that, he kindly stopped for me. The courage held but ourselves and immortality. Generally, the Dickinson poem is like lyrics, short but full of meaning. Like in this first stanza, if even though is short, it means meanings. This stanza explains that death will come at any time, ready or not ready. Every human being has to face it. And immortality explains that after death we will lead to immortality, an eternal journey that will somehow end. So this poetry is because that. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you for your nice attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.